and taste something.
Not good, John.
Back in the cottage.
Bobby, you're live. You need to do the introduction.
We're live now. Hey, how about that, everybody? Welcome to week 42 of our Becker Vineyards virtual tasting that we get to share together and enjoy these beautiful wines. So tonight we've got a great lineup of our 2016 Canada Family Chardonnay, 2018 Dolcetto Reserve from the Wilmeth Family Vineyard, and our beautiful 2018 Claret. So I hope y'all have them ready and we can enjoy them together tonight. So we'll hand it on over.
Alrighty, Bobby, thank you for that beautiful introduction.
You're welcome.
Welcome back for another week. You and Nichole both, Joe and Doc, the whole gang is here practically. The gang that isn't here is off showing goats somewhere. So
Is the season.
Exactly. So to let everybody know, we're going to start off with the 2016 Chardonnay. So go ahead and pour yourself a glass. And we're going to power through these things. We're going to be you 5 minutes to drink all three.
We pour them together.
Doc, would you like to introduce the week for us, sir?
For me, the week is a wonderful delight that we've had transition of power in a honest way and straightforward, and we have new options and new directions, and I hope it's wonderful. And at the same time, the epidemic could hardly be worse, and we just, again, our hearts out to everyone in this battle in every way, at every level. As Joe says, the teachers, and in addition to the doctors and nurses, and all of our friends who've been sick, some of whom have died. It's sad and sadder. But this is a moment to say thanks for everyone being here, and thanks for enjoying this wine with us, and an hour of escape from the pandemic.
Well, I'm sorry, I could not agree with you more. I would like, if you don't mind me adding, I was very, very happy to see the release. The vaccines are coming a little quicker now and everything. And having older parents and friends and family with immune compromised issues, we were very grateful to see things move forward there.
Same here.
I would like to thank Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson coming up. Y'all are good. So Joe, I'm going to put you on the hot seat, sir, because I haven't been able to do that for almost a whole week. So, would you like to kick off with the Chardonnay?
Yeah, I opened these wines about an hour ago, and just poured the Chardonnay, and we were talking before the broadcast that this is the 2016 Canada Family Chardonnay, and it's Mrs. Canada has an absolutely wonderful Chardonnay vineyard. We've really, I think, made some great Chardonnays off of her vineyard, and this is amazing. We can make a Burgundian style Chardonnay in Texas. It's beautiful. It's light. It's got some butterscotch on the nose, or yes, a little bit of butterscotch on the nose, but a very rich, creamy mouthfeel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very nice. It's just starting to kind of hit its stride at 2016. Mm-hmm. This is the fun part about being able to make white wine and being able to make Chardonnay in particular and let it age both in barrel and in bottle. And it's very nice that I have such a supportive boss that allows me to age this for 2 full years in barrel with no argument.
French oak barrel said that.
See that? See, I kept a straight face. So Doc, what are your impressions on the Chardonnay? And would you mind diving back into Brenda's place a little bit more, and what it was about the old Chardonnay that attracted you guys?
Well, and so I think before she began planting grapes, there was somebody else had planted Chardonnay, and you would think at that spot and at that altitude, exposed to all these enormous variations in weather, terrible freezes and winds and drought, that sort of an untainted Chardonnay vineyard wouldn't have a chance. And apparently on its own, did very well for a number of years. And so she decided to come in and begin pruning it and trying to establish it. And actually, I guess a few years ago, we one of the first harvests from that older vineyard. I don't know how old it is, John. Do you know, 20, 30, 40 years?
Yeah, it's 30 plus years on that older acre and a quarter or so. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we harvested the grapes a little early with the thought of making a Blanc de Blanc champagne with those grapes.
Right.
And I remember they were quite delicious. I think they wound up maybe in this bottle of wine right here. But
yes.
But it's amazing to see that, and somehow that just tells you that there's something about that spot, that microclimate, unlikely and counterintuitive as it is, that you can grow Chardonnay there.
Right.
I don't think it'd be hard to find a wine advisor who would say plant Chardonnay in Plains, Texas, but there it is. And then, yeah.
Just looking at her soil, that rocky soil that they have to drill through to put posts in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the interesting part too, Jody was kind enough to print out a soils map blow up of the Canadas for me. Back. And back where that old Chardonnay is, I mean, there's a lot of sand drifting up there. You can see it on the ground when you go up there. But it's not, it belies how shallow that is there. Yeah. But it's and it does very well. But it also it's got a lot of limestone in that area. So
maybe that's what gives it its backbone. It's interesting to me that during the WPA, during the Depression, topographic maps and soil maps were made for every county in Texas. Mm-hmm. And so you could go to the county agent in your county and get a book, and it will show you topographic maps describing every square foot of soil in that county. So and both the topsoil, subsoils.
Right.
It's really an interesting thing. We did that before we planted in Gillespie County.
Well, so with that WPA project, Doc, how much were they paying you per hour?
Not what I deserved. They didn't have minimum wage then, John. But
yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah, you're right that those in-depth maps are invaluable. And it was funny in the office here at the house in Jody's office. She has an entire blow up of Texas as a huge full wall size map, and it delves in county by county into it's fascinating. I just wish I knew what all the little letters meant. Well, I think with the 2016 Nichole, you and Bobby both have been responsible for introducing this to all of our guests. So tell us what both you and Bobby, and I'll start with you, Nichole. What are your impressions from the first release till now, the age of this wine?
When the 2016 first came out, you mean?
Yeah, versus how it is now.
We've had some people that, let's see, so if we also had the 2017 out. And so when they've tried both, all of a sudden they go, wait, what was this one right in front of that? I'm like, oh, it's a 2016. And when they taste that, and they actually tried it like months in advance. They just kind of didn't realize it. And so they're actually blown away by the richness on the palate, and how the oak, and the oak, it's beautiful. It's not overpowering, but it's just the right amount that gives it a fun glossiness on the palate, really rounds out the mouthfeel. And it's almost like the wine, it's taken on a little bit of, I agree with Joe. It's got some of that butterscotch. It almost has a little on the delicate side. Mm-hmm. It still has some nice citrus, nice orange blossom to it. Mm-hmm. But to answer your question, they're actually blown away that it's a wine that they had tried when it's young and didn't realize how much it could change, but in a positive way.
Mm-hmm. So Bobby, what do you think?
So when we first released it, I kind of reminded me of like a Chablis, a little bit more bright and crisp.
Mm-hmm.
kind of floral notes. Whereas when we released that 17, it had a little bit more body to it. But I think over time, this has really opened up and is aged beautifully. I mean, the color on it is just beautiful on the color, just that rich golden hue, and then definitely
It
get
does.
floral notes, the orange blossom, a little bit of apricot notes on the nose. Still, a little bit of that fruit is still kind of showcasing, and then that richness. I mean, just definitely like what Nichole said, just rounds out the mouthfeel on the back end. But yeah, this has been a phenomenal wine. And when people come in and mention, I didn't think Texas could have Chardonnay. It's like, well, we're the biggest producer of Chardonnay in Texas. So, I mean, we get as much Chardonnay as we possibly can. So and we showcase it very well. So people are pretty surprised by it.
Yeah, it's done very well. You know, we've had a couple of Chardonnays from other than the High Plains that, drew talent specifically.
Mhm.
You know, we do a fair amount from his, and actually the 2017 is the Talent Vineyards designate, where this is the Canada Vineyards. So the being able to really pick and choose which one we want to do each year. But yeah, this also breaks the mold of my own rule, which is not too much oak. This is 100% new French oak, fermented and aged.
Wow.
And the trick with that is not to let Dr. Becker know. No, the trick with that is letting it sit in the barrel long enough that it goes through that toasted edge and then comes back and mellows out and the fruit comes forward. But
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I feel like we haven't talked about in a while. You know, we originally, I think when we were aging. I think before, John, we were aging a lot of our whites. I think 8 months, something like that. And there was. I think it's you that's kind of brought out this. We can age these white wines, these Texas white wines in oak for almost 2 years, and it's amazing that change that it goes through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. It's really important too, because if you're going to use, that's step back a little bit. If you're going to use 100% new oak, you really do need to let it sit for quite some time, because it will.
No, you need a loan, John.
What?
You need a bank loan.
Yeah, well, I know a guy. Yeah, but you do need to let it sit in there a long time. It needs to go through that ugly duckling stage of being very oaky tasting or very toasty tasting, losing some fruit, hits that apex, and then kind of comes back down into its own, where it mellows out, the fruit comes forward, the toasted notes go into the background. That creaminess that starts to develop too from the glycerol development from the yeast sitting on its yeast. So it's we do a little bit of batonnage initially during malactic fermentation, and then we let it sit sur lees for the entirety of its life, as long as it's healthy. Lees on a wine give it the best protection. So this wine was only racked once prior to, well, twice, once out of barrel and once out of cold stability tank prior to bottling. So it sat for its full 2 years on its own lees. And that offers a lot of not only protection, natural antioxidant protection, but offers that creaminess in the background. It helps save the fruit.
And I feel like that natural, so-called quote unquote natural filtration really allows the varietal characteristics of the Chardonnay to stay and be very prominent.
Absolutely. There's a point of paying homage to hands-off winemaking, and then there's who actually does it. Well, everybody loves a good story, perhaps some more than others. I have been known to tell a story or two, but actually really being able to have it in the right environment, making all your decision making before it becomes an issue, so that you can let the wine age by itself. That's the important part.
There's a famous story about aging wine. A wine tank in the early days of the Texas wine industry apparently somehow ruptured, and all of the wine spilled out on the floor, and it was an area that contained it. And they just took a pump and pumped it back into the tank. And it was called Chateau Lafitte after that. But actually, it won a silver medal with the San Francisco wine competition. So yeah, you should try that, John. You may have.
Sure. Yeah. The 5-second rule.
That's called hands-on winemaking.
Yeah, right.
Feed on. Yeah.
Books that community.
Do we charge more for hands-on winemaking?
I thought the quote was, if you were in the wine business a long enough time, you're going to end up with one of those ruptured tank stories.
Yes, I think so.
More than likely. Or see it happen from a distance.
Yeah.
It is funny. This industry is replete with stories like that. Accidents, of course, happen. Sometimes happy accidents, sometimes not. But at the end of the day, when you're talking to people, it's like how you really don't want to let people see the back very often. Don't let them see how you make the sausage.
I will share one story. I hope my brother's watching, but long ago, I think we came in for Lavender Festival, or no, it would have been Grape Stomp, and we had one of those small cuboid shaped tanks, and had put the wine was fermenting in the tank, but the tank had been sealed. And so we came in, and my brother and I noticed that the tank had changed from a cuboid to a spherical shape.
Yeah.
So my brother,
It wasn't a square tank anymore.
it was not a square tank anymore. So my brother took a rope, and of course he was very protective. He told me to go stand somewhere else, but behind a tank, and he tied one end of the rope to the handle on the seal at the top of the tank, and went behind a fermentation tank and yanked it, and the top of the tank went all the way to the top of our ceiling in the winery, in what's now the tasting room.
As did a geyser of wine.
Right.
All the way up, yeah.
Yeah.
It looked like a volcano.
Joe, when you're in the middle of that story, Joe, I looked down at my screen to see Doc's face, and it looked like every parent who just found out their adult child what they did as a teenager.
That's
Well, we had a keg of wine that somebody sealed, and took a hard seal to it, and then took the seal off. The little stainless steel disc that seals it popped off, and it was a geyser, a 15-gallon geyser that went up and out. The entire keg emptied itself in one fell swoop.
Right.
It was kind of cool looking, but the shouts of do it again, we ignored. It does happen.
So there was one Federweiser a couple years ago. We didn't have a firm bung on the barrel that we're on the pavilion. Yeah, and then all of a sudden we hear this big pop,
Boom.
and the bung hit the ceiling of the pavilion. So that was pretty fun.
I've seen a barrel break because of fermentation pressure. The bung gets that perfect seal where it's not leaving. The pressure builds up. The silicone against the wood is just, it's hard pressure against it, and it'll crack the heads, and the wine will just spew out. Not here. No, Doc, none of the barrels. Yeah, it can happen. So somebody asked if this went through malolactic fermentation. Sam, yes.
Twice.
Twice. Yes, it did. Now, there was a portion of this that did not, because it was so low in pH when it came off the vine initially. So there's a small percentage that did not, but the vast majority of it did. So what we did with this, we took some early harvest off of the older vines from the Canada vineyard. We took that at about 18.5 bricks. And then we let the rest of it, the younger vines, sit until it was about 24.5, 25 bricks. Then we made those two separate lots, and then we came back later and blended them back together. What that did was offer some really interesting body, but acid is so very important in the wine for body, for flavor protection, also for carrying on the palate. It did a beautiful job. So the portion that was harvested early did not go through malolactic. The portion that was harvested later did. So, so vast majority of it did go through malolactic fermentation. I'm just looking to see if we have any other questions about the Chardonnay. If not, I think we can move on to the Dolcetto if everybody wants to. So go ahead and pour yourselves a little bit of this beautiful 2018 Dolcetto Reserve from the Wilmeth Vineyards. So we have Jet to thank for quite a bit of good fruit here. You know, this just gets just so interesting after a couple of years. Every vintage has just gone through this growth phase after being in the bottle, not biological growth phase, just a development phase.
Now, what inspired Jet to grow Dolcetto? What made him? I know he has some other like Bordeaux varietals growing, but what inspired him to do Dolcetto?
You know, I'm not sure what the initial impetus behind him planting the Dolcetto, other than Jet's a curious man. So I'm sure he saw the challenge of it, and he did have somebody on the hook for growing it. You know, initially they wanted it, and then we picked it up when it came into full production. He had quite a bit and asked us if we wanted some. So our entry into this was in 2015, was the first year that we got the Dolcetto from him. And we actually made a single vintage of that. Now the 2016 vintage, we did not make as a single standalone Dolcetto, but we did use it in a couple of really nice blends. And then the 2017 and then the 2018. So this is our third vintage of Dolcetto. And I am looking at the 2019, but it's still just, it's probably getting close to being ready to think about making into a vintage. So Doc, what do you think of Dolcetto?
I think this is wonderful. It's, you know, I was just going to ask you, what's your position on the ordinance of 1593 in Doglione? Do you agree with it or not?
Actually, it wasn't a bad ordinance. I just don't know why you voted for it.
I just could not be set up with any better.
You handed me the biggest softball in the world.
On the table.
So the ordinance was that St. Matthew's Day, September 21st, was the date at which before there could be no harvesting of Dolcetto, the little sweet one, right? And so was this harvested after September 21st? That's the question, John.
Well, you know, as you're fond of saying, I like to break all sorts of rules. So my apologies to the beautiful Italian growers and their wonderful ordinances of 1593 and thereafter, but I did not wait that late in the year to harvest this. Jet gave it to us in the beginning of September. So I think it was actually
Dolcetto is famous for the spice and the fruit together, and that's definitely what I get from this. You know, sort of blackberry, plum, spice notes, wonderful tannin. The tannin is drinkable, but it's just this wine's going to be fun for a long time, John, I think.
Oh yeah, I think so too, which is really interesting to me. I'm not used to equating Dolcetto to vintage, you know, old vintage wine. So we'll see how long it lasts.
True.
But somebody asked on here, just to backtrack, if we would ever consider aging and fermenting and aging Chardonnay in stainless steel until we bottle it. And the answer to that is we do it all the time. So, so yes, we do. Well, the Dolcetto, Nichole, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
I agree with Dr. Becker about the plums. Kind of like it's got a spicy plum characteristic to it. I also like the color. It's kind of got like a rich ruby red, and there's also kind of like a cherry syrup characteristic and some nice smokiness as well. And I think this particular vintage is coming across a little bit on the bolder side. I know Dolcettos can be thought of more as maybe medium body, but this one's coming across kind of bold, but very, very nice.
Yeah, and just so you know, Nichole, we try not to ever agree with Doc just to frustrate him. So.
Is that spice you guys are getting? Is that I get that on the back palate? Is that cassis or what are you guys tasting with that? Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely say cassis, black currant, most definitely on there. You know, it's interesting to me. Dolcetto has always had a very fair portion of brown spice, like think cooking spice, like you know, not quite clove, not quite allspice, but in that kind of nebulous group, I guess. But, Bobby, what do you get?
So yeah, I think like I agree with Nichole. I think this out of the Dolcettos that we've come out with, this one is probably the biggest body out of them so far. And you know, like the previous one, the 17, I think it had a lot more, showcased a lot more fruit. Or this one definitely, I mean, you can almost chew on it. It's got almost a chewy characteristic to it.
Very jammy, very jammy.
Yeah, which is just a great mouthfeel. Just kind of, it lingers on the palate, which I think is amazing. But also get a little bit of that tobacco on the finish as well from, I guess, the American oak, just kind of showcasing through.
So, Doc, besides the ordinance of 1593.
Wait, John, I have a question.
Yes.
Obviously, this is a vineyard-specific designation for this wine.
Yes.
Is there anything? Is it 100%? Is it a blend or?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. Actually, it's not 100%. There's 2% Teats Raw in there.
Okay.
So yeah, there's just a little nudge, but not very much. I don't, you know, when I taste it, the Teats Raw that we put in there as a background note was more like using salt or MSG or vinegar in cooking. It was to bring out the background flavors a little more. That Dolcetto, when we first blended this, was still fairly young. And so it needed just a little oomph to help open it up. But everything that we've had in this since bottling and development here has been all Dolcetto. It really is beautiful. And you can see it follow the same lines as the 17 and the 15 on that level. You can really see that development. So, you know, back to Doc's point about aging, and that's what I wanted to circle back with him about was, I do think, you know, after tasting this and thinking back about the other two, I'm not a bit surprised that if this would last another 8-10 years, I think it would do very, very well.
And there are some lighter styles of Dolcetto, right? I mean, and we tend to do, we obviously make a darker, bolder Dolcetto here because of our climate, because
because of the climate during the Saturday meetings when somebody starts saying Petit Verdot.
Watch those tannins.
There you go.
You know, yes, Joe, in all fairness, we do get a lot of phenolic development, especially out of Jet's Vineyard. I swear to you, it's that, you know, the adage where if you lost a tooth out in his vineyard, 2 days later, you'd find a boulder. It's a wonderful place to grow grapes.
But what I say about this wine, though, John, is that the finish on it is just amazing for a Dolcetto. I mean, it's like, I wish we had a room full of Dolcetto winemakers tasting this with us. I think it'd be great fun.
We could arrange that. They have flights to northern Italy, just saying.
They won't let you leave. Is the problem.
And that's a problem, how? Yeah, so anybody want to comment on this? Joe, what did you, when we first made Dolcetto versus the third vintage, and we'll circle back to others, but what do you see progression wise in the Dolcetto program?
I was trying to, what was our first year we did the Dolcetto? Was it
the 2015?
2015. Okay. I think it's interesting. I think it's evolved in much the same way that the Cabernet has from Jet's Vineyard over time. You know, we've had some interesting years. I have to say, this particular vintage to me reflects the fact, this was 18. And so we had that very hot, dry spring. And so we had, as I mentioned ad nauseum on this Zoom meeting, that we had, I think what winemakers like, which is better juice to skin ratio. And so you get a lot more fruit extraction. And you're right. There's something about his vineyard that gives these darker, bolder, richer wines, pretty much right off the bottling line.
Absolutely. We did do, in the last two vintages of Dolcetto, I've taken a higher percentage of Saunier off of there. And a couple other little tricks that when we're doing the pressing too.
Yeah.
Separating out a little more finicky about the hard press versus the normal press. Press from 0.2 to 0.8 bar to me is a normal press, and then anything above that starts to become a hard press. It's a general rule of thumb. It's really by taste, though, at that point. We went a little more extracted in 18 on the pressing. So I decided to really double down on, okay, I'm going to really kind of yank this around a little bit and see what kind of tannin extraction I could get before I started getting the bitter seed extraction. So you have to taste frequently, because sometimes it's right in the middle of a 5-minute press run. You're like, oh crap, I'm there, cut it off.
So this one saw a little more of an aggressive press.
Yes.
Okay.
2018 and 2019 both, because I really liked the results. Now, it's hard to tell when you first do it too. You're not quite sure if you've messed it up or not, because you're putting it all together. You can separate the hard press, which we've done before, but in my experience, separating the hard press for too long is, there's no reason for it. That hard press has all that wine needs, which is a really good burst of its own tannin in there, for protection. And also it takes 6, 8, 10 months for it to really meld in. We did not get as aggressive with the 15. We enjoyed the results. It was a lighter wine overall. But
John, here's the question. We've had a lot of different harvest levels of maturity with the Dolcetto since 15.
Mm-hmm.
And 15 was harvested at about 26 bricks, if I'm remembering correctly.
Just about. Yep.
And it was just a remarkable wine. And then 16 was harvested early, maybe 23 bricks.
Yeah, it was. It was harvested it was a little over 24, but it actually dropped slightly in the tank.
Yeah. And then the subsequent harvests have been, what was the level of ripeness on?
So 18 and 19 both were coming in around 25.
Okay.
And
it would be, but so we thought that 16 we just couldn't even deal with it, and then it just came around so dramatically and over time, just amazing.
It did, but 16 needed age, and it had a lot of green, not seed, but green tannins in there, so it needed time to develop.
So that's my question. We thought 15 was optimal, and then we'd got sort of this greenish 16, but at the end of the day, it was wonderful.
Yes.
It'd be fun to taste a vertical of these. And
yes, it would be. The unfortunate part about it is 16, we did not bottle any of it by itself. I'll be happy to share the meeting notes about that.
We actually tasted that 16 last week in the D'Estate.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's where a fair portion of that went into the D'Estate, and it did a beautiful job, especially with Zinfandel and Barbera. It's just gorgeous. It also, the 16, literally half of the 16 harvest went into the Culinaria.
True.
So,
which was wonderful. So the question then is, what do you think is the optimal harvest profile for Dolcetto from Texas?
I think the optimal is a pH of about 3.9 to 4.1, right around there. I think that's where you really want to target that. I know there are a lot of people that worry about losing too much acid at that point, but unfortunately, because of our warm nights, we're going to lose acid quicker than they are in a more Mediterranean climate. We can replace that acid. And regardless of what anybody's about to say about acidulation or not to acidulate, my firm opinion is that tartaric acid comes from grapes. I kind of put it back into the grape. So
we're with you.
Yeah, but on that level, it's that flavor. If you get that cola flavor and you're biting into that grape and it's 24 bricks or 26 bricks, it doesn't matter. you've got that flavor, take that grape. The pH to me, almost at that level, is a little bit more important. But if I have to choose a sugar for that, I'm going to say 25.5 bare minimum on that.
I agree.
Dolcetto. Yeah, I will take
The
24
finish
on Cabernet, but that Dolcetto needs a little more oomph.
I just keep coming back to the finish on this wine. It's just amazing.
Well, you know, Jed has worked with us just brilliantly. We give him a range to take it in, you know, and that's basically when we're close to here, what's it tasting like or whatever, and he's happy to accommodate us. You know, and we're very pleased with that. But he is on it. He knows what we want, and that poor man stresses out pretty hard. He and Nick both. But yeah, Jet's worked with us a lot with that, with the Dolcetto and getting it to the optimum point. Proof is in the pudding, so to speak.
Yeah.
Good.
So we've got, is there any residual sugar on the Dolcetto? Well, there's residual sugar in everything. It's just whether it's measurable or not. No, this is considered dry. It's less than 3 grams per liter, which is 0.3%. 5 grams, excuse me, I can't talk. 5 grams per liter is where you start to experience sweetness on the palate. So anything below that is considered dry. Bone dry is like 0.5 gram per liter, but sometimes if wine's that dry, you get other issues going with. But this is about 3 grams per liter.
So we have a lot of people that come into the tasting room not knowing what a Dolcetto is, and being in the kind of near San Antonio and the Hispanic community, and they know dulce or dulce, you know, meaning sweet. They kind of get thrown off. They're like, "Is it a sweet wine?" No, it's not a sweet wine. It means little sweet one in Italian. So we have to kind of, you know, walk through that and, you know, navigate that.
And why do they call it the little sweet one, Dr. Becker, Senior?
When they were passing the ordinance in Dorliani in 1593, they said it's not sweet until September 21st.
Okay. So hence we call it the little sweet one.
That's my answer. I'm sticking to it.
It's not in reference to the size of the berry itself.
The berries aren't that small.
No?
No, not for a grape, for a wine grape. I mean, if you look at a petite Syrah grape or a Merlot grape, you know, well, actually a Merlot or a Cab grape, even a really good Cab grape's tiny as hell. These berries look, you know, almost as big as table grapes.
Really?
Yeah, they're kind of like the size of the Counois.
There's what's the compound in the skin that Dolcetto has a very high amount of that gives it I can't think of it, that gives it the natural, what inspires the sweetness, so-called, in the wine. I know I've read that somewhere.
Yeah, it's called love. No.
That's what we do here.
Yeah, no. Joe, I don't know. I would have to go look. I cannot remember. But you are absolutely right. There is, and I don't have, unfortunately, the computer I'm using for Zooming with everyone is also the computer that I have to access. And the last time I tried that a few weeks ago, I completely kicked myself out of a Zoom. So, but I apologize. When we find that, I'll put it up. I'll make sure we put it up on our Facebook page so everybody can see it. Okay. Everybody has had, now guys, we're getting ready to do the third wine. So I'm just putting everybody on warning about food pairings coming up. So start thinking. I can't believe I have to tell wine people to think about food. I don't know. We went wrong somewhere. Nichole, would you lead us off with the Claret on your impressions, please?
Okay. I think on the nose, I pick up a lot of the raspberries, which I think it's because of the Cabernet Sauvignon coming through.
Mhm.
Texas, it seems like Texas Cabernet Sauvignons, the raspberry note is pretty dominant. I also pick up some cassis to this. Now, when I taste it, I pick up maybe a little bit of chalk in the background, a little earthiness, a little like olive leaf. So this aromas and the flavors are a little bit different, but all very delicious. And one of the things I've always liked about the Claret is how all the 5 different varietals, the Cabernet Sauvignon, the Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Petit Verdot, and Malbec all work together. And it's interesting how they taste so different separately. But it's almost like when you're sipping this wine, you take a sip, you wait a few seconds, sip again, and you just kind of peel through all these different layers.
Olive leaf is kind of, you got me thinking at that herbaceousness, which is really nice. And I'm wondering if that's not coming from the Cab Franc.
Cab Franc.
Yeah. But that is kind of cool. Joe, what do you think?
I get the Cab Franc. I get that. I get the herbaceousness too. I get a little bit of the peppery, the green peppery note, but it's very mild. It's not overwhelming. It's not on the back palate. I think just to remind people that I'm sure most people know that the Claret is originally, it's the British. It's what the British call the traditional Bordeaux blend that Nichole just alluded to, and we think that it may have come from the word Claret, which was what the French in Bordeaux called a sort of a generic pink wine, but lighter wine. My favorite story though is after the 100 Years' War. I read this Jancis Robinson article long ago, but after the 100 Years' War, the Scots and the French had an alliance, which allowed the Scots to come down and get all to pick up wine from Bordeaux. And when that became widely distributed in England, and that's when we think that it became more widely known as Claret at that time.
Oh, that's interesting. That I didn't know the Scots were involved with that. But
Yeah.
Nice. So Doc, what do you think of the Claret?
But what really struck me was going from the Dolcetto to the Claret. So you depart from that wonderful sort of raspberry fruit in the Dolcetto to this wonderful classic Bordeaux taste and smell. And so I there's no doubt that I think the first red wine that I loved was Bordeaux, and and it's all here. The aromatic has the forest floor notes, the saddle leather notes, a little eucalyptus, just everything that kind of wafts in and out of a Bordeaux nose. And I love the taste. I'm very proud of this wine.
Well, and this is a wine that, if you're out joining us, if you don't have this, you can actually go down to your local wine shop here in Texas, almost anywhere in Texas, and grab a bottle of the Claret. So, it is very widely.
And did this win a lovely medal somewhere?
It did, if I remember correctly.
Did it win a gold medal in San Francisco?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, I mean, that's not amateur wine.
No, apparently not. I was paid $1.99 to make it. It's a professional. Yeah, no, we did very well with the Claret. Actually, several of our brands of Claret has consistently produced pretty awesome results when we enter it straight across the board. So, you gotta love the fact that people love a good Bordeaux blend. That's the reason. It's the reason Bordeaux is king. It's a beautiful wine for sure. I'm just thinking back on this, and I don't mean to harp on you too much, Nichole, but it's funny because I just last night had a cup of olive leaf tea, and you're absolutely right. That pegged that right on the nose.
Not. It's very light. It's not an olive, but it's just like the leaf part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I have to say I've conveniently timed a Zoom meeting for my children's school before we get to food pairing, so I'm escaping.
I saw your note. Okay, buddy.
Great to see everybody.
Take care, Joe.
See everybody. See you next week.
You bet.
Yeah.
Sorry, somebody climbed up my leg while I was trying to talk to Nichole. Decided they wanted attention. I know, right? So I have to point out, so everybody sees the label, the three ladies.
Yes.
And Doc, I want you to discuss Les Trois Dames.
That's right on. So I'm responsible for that name. And so one of the first years that we made Claret, we were buying Cabernet Sauvignon from one woman who was a grower in West Texas. Merlot from a second, and Cabernet Franc from the third. And so I had these wonderful red grapes grown by 3 women who managed their own vineyards, and we were buying the grapes, and so I thought, it would be a lot of fun to acknowledge them just as by calling this wine Le Trois Dames, the 3 ladies, and that's where it began. But the funniest thing was that after we released it, maybe a month or two, a guy arrived with a pickup truck and said, I'm here, I want to buy 40 cases of that ladies' wine. And we were saying, ladies' wine. And then we realized that there was a big interest in this Claret, this Bordeaux blend from the female wine growers, and selling it in West Texas. And off it went. We said, here it is. Thank you.
Well, tonight, I guess the Women of Wine on Facebook were doing a wine tasting with their group, and they chose 2 of our wines. I was very flattered to see that they did I think it was the Tempranillo and the Viognier. So, there, unfortunately, I think we're not as well represented as we need to be. There are a lot of good palates in the world, and it's fun for me coming from the West Coast industry where women have made a lot of good inroads in the last 40 years. But one of my, I guess, one of the people I look up to, mentors, heroes, somebody I admire a lot. 2 people that one of them specifically was Sarah Gott and Heidi Barrett, both of whom I consider preeminent winemakers. If I get to their level before I die, I'm going to be a happy person. So,
You betcha. You bet.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
But I love the fact that it's Le Trois Dames, and I personally think that we should come out with a label that celebrates the women of Texas in history. We got a lot of them. So I think we've got a lot of things to choose from.
I'd go for that.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, you bet. Sure.
When I looked up Le Trois Dames, I saw that something about Puy Fusé.
Uh-huh.
You could say. Mhm.
They have a thing about Le Trois Dames. So.
Really? Gosh, I don't know that.
Yeah. But it had to do with the white wine.
Yes.
Chardonnay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it was Brenda Canada, Gay Wilmeth, and Betty Bingham, correct?
Oh wow.
No.
No.
It could be.
Yeah, I think that's, I've got to look. Is it on the back label? Yep, it is. It's on the back label. But yeah, so
We've changed the names. That's true. But the first 3 were different.
yes, was Mrs. Cooper in there?
She was Cabernet Franc.
Right.
Mrs.
That
Hunt,
was a beautiful vineyard.
and then Mrs. Newsom.
Right.
Mrs. Newsom, that's right. Merlot.
Right. Yeah. Also Laverne's vineyard. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Wonderful woman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant Merlot. There's just a lot of fun to choose from with West Texas grapes. There's no doubt about it.
True.
Okay, so who has not expressed their opinion on this particular wine? Bobby?
So I do get like the green notes, and I mean,
What do you think?
definitely that green pepper, as Joe was mentioning
Do you
earlier.
have a favorite? The 3, they're so different.
But when
It's hard to.
Nichole was mentioning the olive leaf, I was thinking Dolmas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be something great to go with this, but that's kind of a nice little segue there. So
Dolmas? No, that's you get the award for originality here, buddy.
right?
Yeah. Okay, well, if you're going to start it, then you've got the Dolmas with the Claret. What do you have with the Dolcetto and the Chardonnay?
Dolcetto, there was a few years back, I think it was a Valentine's dinner. I think our previous chef, we did a blue crab dish, and I think that would go great with the Dolcetto. The Chardonnay, I think a light pasta, olive oil, like a I don't know, like grilled vegetables and a light
Mhm.
pasta dish with that. I mean, it's kind of what I'm feeling with that.
Like a primavera.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't want to make a reference to our wine, but
It's fine. Just means spring. Okay, Nichole, you're up on the hot seat. So food pairings for 3 wines.
I guess right now, since it's cold, cold weather season, for Chardonnay, I was thinking like there's a Southwestern potato pumpkin soup um, that I have a recipe from that's just really delicious, and I think that would be a great pairing with the Dolcetto. I think you can go extravagant like an osabuco. I think you can also go simple, like if you're doing like a shish kebab, like you're just putting a shish kebab on the grill.
Mm-hmm.
The claret, I would say like empanadas, like beef empanadas, or even just a really good homemade burger, with sauteed onions, mushrooms. I would definitely say the claret has some flexibility in what you can pair it with.
Fantastic. Doc, what are you thinking?
Well, with the Chardonnay, I'm going to keep ordering Dungeness crab until I get it. So, pardon me. So Dungeness crab. If Uber would deliver it. With the Dolcetto, I want to be in a restaurant in Boston, an Italian restaurant that has wonderful meatballs and spaghetti. I love that dish. And it's not fancy, and this would just knock its socks off. And I want to be in a little area in the Dordogne River Valley, a little town called Dome, which my sister-in-law Karen told me about and said you must stay there. We did. There's a cliff that rises 1,000 feet above the Dordogne River Valley. This little hotel, the Esplanade, is right on the edge. I want to have dinner there, and I want to have beef bourguignon and have this claret with it.
Oh yeah,
So
that would.
that little hotel, are they known for defenestration by any chance?
I hope not. Pardon me.
Sorry.
I choked on something. Sorry.
It's okay. We don't think you have the Rona.
Thank you.
No, Dr. Becker, if you're in Boston, there's a place called Brico that's really, really good.
Ooh,
Italian place.
Yeah.
Brico, delicious.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and my favorite restaurant died years ago. It was Anthony's Pier 4.
Oh,
It was a beautiful Italian restaurant, did seafood and Northern Italian cuisine. So, Boston. Here's to a great town. Oops, sorry. Just kicked the cat. So, all right. Well, Bobby, what are we doing next week, sir, for our lineup?
Next week, that would be our Ranger Haze,
Oh, good.
which is great. Let's see. We got our Ranger Haze. We have our Prairie Cuvée, and then our Texas Cab that's in distribution.
Oh, fantastic.
And I've been talking to Bobby about Rangers, and I wanted to report next week on Silas Totten, Ranger captain,
It's coming.
after the Civil War. So we've got Ranger Haze. We need Ranger Totten.
Yes, sir.
Major Tom. Wait a minute.
I'll be there.
What about Major Tom? Wasn't that in a song?
It's Captain Bill. Oh, Major Bill. Yeah.
Okay. So that sounds like a great setup for next week. So as always, you all can find that on the website at beckerwines.com, or you can give us a call at 830-644-2681, extension 230, and Angie will be happy to help you. She loves it when I mention her name, so people can call her. But she is the backbone that keeps us going. So
yeah.
Any other questions or concerns? Nobody's really asking. The only question I have up here, somebody asked earlier, what is Brix? And somebody said measurement of sugar, and that is true to an extent. It's the measurement of soluble solids in the grape juice, which about 94% of it is sugar. So we just do a direct equation between Brix and sugar content.
Yes, and John, the chemist who described this technique's name was Brix.
Mm-hmm.
Professor BRIX. And so that it's really a measure of glucose indirectly, as you're saying, but it bears his name.
Yes. So here's to Professor Bricks and the wonderment of his little thingy bobber that we look through.
Right.
And we're glad to have it. Yeah.
All righty,
Oh.
everybody. I hope you've enjoyed this week, and we look forward to seeing you next week. In the meantime, keep safe, enjoy a glass of wine, enjoy your good company, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.
And to you too. Thank you. Thank you.